reason that we're here is because you three people were adults who came to college as adults. And a couple of people in my classes, namely you guys here, pointed out to me that that we concentrated real heavily on high school students coming into college and what the transition is like from high school to college. And some of you have pointed out that, well, it would be kind of nice to know what are we going to expect here as adults. We've been to high school. We know what it's like in high school. We know it's different. We're coming out of the workplace. And so I thought it was a fabulous idea you guys had. And so I decided let's have a little small panel interview on, just what it was like for you to come into college as an adult. And so first of all, let's introduce everybody. This is Renee Owley.
Hi.
And this is Patty Peluso. She has the unfortunate circumstance of being my wife. But she did come into college as an adult after 37 years of work, and this is Mike Warren. So the first question I have for you, and we'll just go right across from here, is tell us real quickly, before you came to college, what was your status in life, work, whatever?
So this is my third time at Pierce.
Okay.
So I've had time as a student and also time in the workforce. I've had a ton of different jobs. I've worked in special education, I've worked with animals, and I've worked in the automotive industry, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay, great. Patty, what's your background?
I spent 37 years as a flight attendant.
Okay, that's awesome. All right. And Mike, what about you?
I spent almost 20 years in the food industry, worked my way up to chef, and then stopped and then was an artist for a little while, and then realized that I needed to come to school in order to get some other goals out of the way.
Cool. All right. I like it. So the first question I got for you is, when you first came to college as an adult student, what were you most apprehensive about?
I would say that my biggest concern was not being able to balance work and school. Obviously, I need to work. I need to pay for food. I got to put gas in my car. And I was worried that it was going to be tough to say, get all my studying done or do my homework when I'm still working full time. Mm-hmm. But so far, I've been fortunate that I have had jobs where I can do my homework while I'm at work. So it's good so far.
Good. Hey, what were you most apprehensive about coming to college?
I was nervous about where to find my classes.
Okay.
And thankfully, Pierce is so small that it was easy to navigate. And a class like College Success for me was, it helped fill in the gaps of everything else that I needed to know entering college for the first time.
Perfect. Mike, what were your biggest apprehensions about coming to college?
I think, honestly, my biggest apprehension was that the cost. Like, I didn't come from, like, a school culture. I came from living by my means, paying rent by the check, stuff like that. So the idea of, like, automatically having to schedule out how to pay for the quarters and all that was incredibly scary to me.
I'll bet. Interesting. Okay. So we got your apprehensions. What were you expecting when you first came to college? In your case, this last time, what were you expecting when you came to college first?
Yeah, well, like I said, I've been to Pierce before, but I would say that the biggest shock for me now is how much older I am than the students. Mm-hmm. I'm 27, so most of these kids are 9 and 10 years younger than me. Mm-hmm. And even that's not a big gap, and I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know who they're talking about, and they look at me like I'm just ancient. It's really weird. Someone was talking about Cardi B, and I didn't know who that was, and she was sorry.
That's great. Okay. Pat, what was what were you expecting? What were you expecting when you came to college?
I really had no expectations. I didn't know what to expect. Other than I had a fear of having to take a math class.
Okay. How about you, Mike? What were you expecting when you came?
I wasn't really expecting anything because, like I said, I didn't come from a school culture, and so I thought the classes would be bigger. I thought the classes would be like auditoriums where like I'd never, I could sit in the back and not actually talk to anybody or anything like that. Just put my head down and barrel through, but it's very more hands-on than I was expecting, I suppose.
Okay, great, awesome. So Renee, you kind of answered this, but maybe if you've got something else also, what's your biggest culture shock when you came to college? And also, what do you think is the biggest difference between college and the world of work, the real world of work?
So I think the biggest surprise for me was that my employers thus far have been far more understanding of the fact that I am not only a full-time student, but I work full-time. They've been far more understanding of that than professors I've had. Like,
Okay.
you are the exception to that rule, but I have a professor this quarter who is just not understanding of it at all, and the workload is insane. Like, she's the professor that they warned you about in high school. It's, I would say that was the biggest surprise for me, and it's also the biggest frustration that I have, I think.
Okay.
A lot of, not just professors, but a lot of students here, I feel like they assume that school is all you do, when the reality is a lot of us work full-time, a lot of us have families. School isn't our only obligation right now, and I think that Pierce as a whole should be a little more understanding of that.
Okay, good. So Patty, what about you? What did you feel was the biggest difference between your professional life and college life?
Well, fortunately, I had no other obligations, so college was my only obligation, and I was really fortunate to just be able to concentrate on college. And as far as coming from the working world, I took the skills that I learned at my job, and they were easily transferable to my life as a college student. So I had time management skills already, and I had all kinds of things that I could apply from my world of work to what I needed to do here to be successful.
Okay. Do you have any big culture shock when you were at?
I was somewhat appalled at the lack of respect that some of my fellow students had for the classroom environment.
Interesting. Very good. Okay. How about you, Mike? What was your biggest culture shock? What was your biggest aha when you?
The biggest thing that got me and almost got me to a bunch of trouble was the scheduling. I'm used to doing like 8 to 16 hours a day from work, and I've been out of school for so long. And one of the first things I went to do was sign up for like 5 classes. And my wife, thankfully, she was like, "No, don't do that. There's a reason why you're only supposed to take 2 or 3." And I was expecting, 8 to 16 hours in one day of school is fine for me. Like, that's in my head, that would make sense. And then I didn't realize that you're also doing like 10 hours of homework so that would be 50 hours of homework. So I had to actually think about like passive scheduling versus class scheduling.
Good. What do you think was the biggest difference between you and between college and the world of work?
The biggest difference between college and the world?
The real world. Okay.
How often actually people don't think this is the real world, I think would be that. Because I mean, everybody's like, when I get out there. But this is just another responsibility. Like,
Okay.
except for the fact that we're doing it to ourselves. Like when you go to work, you've got people who are like, this is what you have to do. And if you don't do it, then the whole work is messed up, and then we're all in trouble together. But we signed up for the school. We are paying for the school out of our pockets and stuff like that. So like, that's the difference, I guess, is that we choose to do this to ourselves.
So in a way, there's not that much of a big difference.
No.
In a way, yeah. Okay. So if this is your chance to lecture the younger generation, if you will, what would you tell a young high school, an 18, 19-year-old, or maybe a running start student coming in? What would you tell them about college and then also about the real world? What would you tell them?
So as far as college is concerned, this is on you. Your mom can't fix your grade. Your mom can't save you anymore. This is on you. This is your responsibility, and you gotta work hard. But this is also the time in your life when you're gonna be figuring out who you are. You're gonna be learning more about yourself, and once you figure that out, you need to be true to yourself. That's what's most important, is being true to you, and also take care of your teeth and wear comfortable shoes. And don't smoke.
There you go. Patty, what would you tell them about the real world, in addition to college?
Well, in the real world, not everybody wins a trophy. And, it's time to grow up. And if you're not ready to go to school, don't waste your parents' money. You know, but you're here now, so work as hard as you can and do your best. Don't just drop out of class and not go and not tell your parents. And if you find that college isn't for you, put it off for a little bit. I wanted to go to work. I knew college would always be there someday if I wanted to go. And I didn't go until I was 57 years old. But I found a career that I loved. And I think if you get out there and you do all kinds of jobs that some you may not always like, but you'll figure out what your passion is someday. And then you'll be ready for college and you'll be ready to work hard and meet your goals toward that passion.
I agree with that. Oh, if you're not ready, don't go. Don't. You're
No,
right.
and that's the thing too, is that, I mean, what is it they say, by 35 or whatever you're doing, you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. But that's not true. I mean, I'm 37 and
now.
going back to school because I'm going into a completely different career field. And I think what I would tell kids, or well, young adults or whatever, when they're coming into school and getting ready for it, is be prepared for change. Because whether you're going to school for a degree in something that you might not do later, or if you go into the real world, and put that time in the training, it's going to be the same amount of effort, really. And you might change later. But at least when you go to school, you can roll those credits over into your next degree or your next certification or something like that. When you go into the real world, like you spend 15 years as a cook like I did, it doesn't necessarily translate to spending the next 15 years in an office or behind a desk.
Got it. Good. I like that. Okay. So one final thing, and this your slight chance to be a little critical, but try to put a spin on it. Yeah. But we know that, like you said, Rainier, the real responsibility is on the students for your success in college. The real responsibility, and like we talked in our college success class, don't be a blame thrower. You're not going to blame. The responsibility is yours. Don't be blaming other people for whatever. That being said, though, what can or could your college success instructor do to make your college experience more valuable and relevant? What can they do to help it work for you?
So I think one thing that would be important is just remembering that not all of us are fresh out of high school. Some of us might need a little bit of time to kind of get back into the swing of things. We need to remember to allow ourselves time to study. It's not just, wake up, go to work, and then go home. It's learn something and then cement it. You need to practice it. So I think it would be important to remember, if you have students that are not fresh out of high school, that they might need a little bit of extra time, to relearn school skills, like taking notes or studying, stuff like that. And that's not always going to be the case. But I think it will be for some people. And it's also, I think, important to remind students that, this isn't, I don't want to say it's not the most important thing, but, don't sacrifice your family, don't sacrifice your job for school, because family is the most important thing.
Sure, no doubt. Great. Okay. What could your college success teacher do? What could a college success teacher do to make your experience maybe flow a little bit better, help you out a little bit, make it a little more relevant for you?
Well, I think I was really fortunate in that my college success teacher was very hands-on as far as bringing out how each lesson in college success applied to our own lives.
Okay.
And I thought that was really important.
So make them real life things. Not,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. That makes perfect sense. What would you do, Mike? What do you think a college success teacher should do to make sure that your experience is valuable and relevant in college?
So one thing that I realized was the younger adults and the kids that are just getting out from high school, they're doing it not always, but mostly because of the fact that it's part of the pattern, like out of college or out of high school into college and then off into my life. Whereas in returning students or late coming students, they're coming because they already have those goals. Like they're doing it because they have a reason to do it. It's not because it's part of the pattern. Yeah. And so like one thing was the goal writing. It was good. I mean, it helped me do the enabling goals and stuff like that. But I already had a set of goals, so I felt like that was a little bit easy for me to just write down what I already wanted to do.
Okay, good, excellent. All right. Anything else, any final comments from anybody? Renee, go ahead if you got something, just anything about the adult student.
I think that what Mike was saying was really relevant, actually. You know, if you want to learn a trade, you should learn a trade. If you don't feel like you're a college student, then, you know, do something else. Go into the military, learn a trade. Do what's going to work for you, because once you get a little bit older, if you're not doing something that you love or that you enjoy, it's really going to start to affect every aspect of your life. You know, you're going to have some depression, you're going to have anxiety. It's going to be hard for you to get up and go to work every morning. So think about that, you know, as a young student. Don't necessarily just go to college because that's what you're supposed to do.
Good.
You know, we're back, we're succeeding so far. It doesn't, not succeeding in college now doesn't necessarily mean you won't succeed later.
Great.
May I jump onto that?
Sure, go ahead.
And like you mentioned with the anxiety, that was one of the big things that I've realized recently was that, you know, I'm dealing with this returning to school anxiety, like how to deal with like being surrounded by kids who don't necessarily know exactly what I know, and then I'm like, am I talking too much because I know about this subject already and stuff like that? But then like I'm taking the public speaking course, and I'm watching the kids and young adults have the exact same anxiety as me. And so it's a lot more relative, and it's across the board, like we're all sharing the same anxiety. And I think it's kind of important to, when you see that in other people, it's easier to just go, okay, this is a normal response and I'm doing just fine.
Great. Any quick last word there, Patty? A little advice to somebody?
I have anxiety just being here.
Okay, thank you very much for all of you for being here. Really appreciate it. Yeah, all right. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
that's a wrap.